This is an iPhone 11 Pro Max with a Beast Grip Pro Series 1.33x anamorphic lens attachment. Can it hold its own against a Blackmagic Pocket 4K with a true anamorphic lens? Let's find out. Hello friends and welcome to another episode of Gear Talk. I am Jeremy from Moonlight Social. Let's get to it. So most of the footage we're going to be talking about today comes from a brand new music video that we just did called Stay Positive. So if you haven't seen that video yet, pause this and go watch it now because they're going to be spoilers. I'm serious. There's a link in the description. Just pause this video, you right click, open that link in a new tab, watch it, and come back here, and then we'll get to talking. Don't worry, I'll wait for you. It's over here, I guess. Twiddling my thumbs. Hey, fun times, right? I hope you enjoyed it. In addition to shooting that video ourselves for no money, we recorded that song, wrote it, mixed it, produced it right here in this room, and you can actually download the album that song is on for whatever you want to pay, even if it's $0. There's a link in the description below. It's called The Carrot, the name of the album, and I really hope you do that because we spent a lot of time on it, and I hope you enjoy it. And as always, if you enjoy our time here together today, please give us the old thumbs up and subscribe and turn the notifications on. It's a good time. Okay, let's get to it. So all of that video was filmed using two setups. One of them was the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K with the Vazen 40mm T2 1.8x anamorphic lens. And the other setup was this iPhone right here. An iPhone 11 Pro Max with the Beast Grip Pro Series 1.33x anamorphic lens attachment. Could you tell in that music video which clip was shot with which setup? So in the first part of this video, I'm going to talk about why we chose to go with the setups we did for the different locations and scenes, and also kind of some of the settings that we used on them so you can have a better understanding of exactly why we used it. And then after that, I'll do a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison between the iPhone anamorphic and the Blackmagic Cinema Camera anamorphic, just because as you'll see from the next section, it's not really a fair comparison because we didn't set out to create a music video that compared two things. We set out to create a music video that told a story, and we had to use the right tools to tell the story at the right time. So to film the footage with the iPhone, we used Filmic Pro, which is a really popular app that a lot of y'all probably already know about. We got it at 4,500 Kelvin, or as close as we possibly could. For whatever reason, you can't just type in the number. You have to use a slider, and I got it at 44.95. Very frustrating. Please fix that, Filmic Pro. But anyways, I digress. We actually shot this in 48 frames per second, which means that I could not use one of the best features of Filmic Pro, which is the flat or log profiles, because you can only use the flat or log profiles if you are shooting in 30 frames per second or less. And this was kind of a hard decision for me, but at the end of the day, I really wanted to shoot everything in 48 frames per second. I do that for as many music videos as I can, and here's why. First of all, when you shoot at 48 frames per second and you maintain a 180-degree shutter angle, you get a 1/96 shutter. It's just a little bit crisper. It's a little bit faster. It's not quite as fast as a war or sports movie, but it just adds a little bit more quickness to some of the action, which tends to lend itself well to music videos. And the second reason is that when you shoot in 48 frames per second, you bring it into a 24 frames per second timeline, you speed the footage up by 2, and then you get your normal, regular speed motion. However, if you leave it at 48 frames per second, you get a natural slow-mo. So what you're doing when you film at 48 frames per second is you're filming kind of two different shots at one time, right? And there's a ton of slow motion, not just in this music video, but in every music video. In fact, using slow-mo is like cinematography 101 to make things feel more cinematic. I have mixed opinions on some of it, but in some cases, it really works. So we decided to shoot in a natural color profile using 48 frames per second. We decided to use the iPhone as our B cam for a very simple reason, and that is we didn't have permission to film in the Walmart we were filming in. So if I were to walk in there with a big old camera, they definitely would have turned us around immediately. But you walk in there with your phone, even with a lens attachment, nobody really thinks twice as you film stuff. So It was really important to be able to get that done. That's also the reason we ultimately ended up having the lens attachment go over the wide angle, and we shot in the wide camera anamorphic, mostly because we knew that we had to capture more of the scene and there was less chance for focus drift, and we just knew that we probably weren't going to have that much time, and we really wanted to get as much as we could before drawing too much attention, which ironically, we did get a little bit of attention from some people at the very end after we'd gotten what we needed, so it worked out. And the one other big thing that we did is we shot in 4K for an HD timeline, which would allow us to crop in and get some, slightly better angles in case we missed something. Basically, we went in wanting to get footage that we could use in the most ways possible. So we wanted to get footage that could be used in real time, slow motion, that we could crop in on, and that would capture a lot of the scene without losing focus quickly. So that's why we went with this. For the footage that we didn't shoot on the iPhone, which is basically everything that wasn't shot in that Walmart, we used the Blackmagic Pocket 4K with the Vazen 40mm 1.8x anamorphic lens. It's a beautiful combo. I've talked about it a little bit on this channel already, and I will definitely talk about it a lot more. But it's just, it gives you gorgeous results. We filmed at 4K DCI, 12:1 compression ratio, which is like the most compression, so the smallest file size, if anybody cares about that. And of course, we shot it in Blackmagic RAW. Now, obviously, you can see how these two setups are really different, and it doesn't really make it a fair comparison. But that's because this is a real-world use case example, right? We weren't trying to film a music video to compare footage from two cameras. We were trying to film a music video that got the entire narrative point across. And our biggest goal in this entire thing was tell the story, do it in a way that doesn't take the audience out of it. And let me know if you think we achieved that. Could you tell when watching the footage that these cameras were so drastically different, and did it take you out of the narrative of the story? Or did we do a good enough job, tell enough of an interesting story that you just enjoyed the video without worrying too much about what camera was what? Genuinely curious. Please leave us a comment below. Let us know if we achieved that goal. All right, so now that we've seen this gear in a more real-world example, let's look at it in a slightly more tested it out example. So for the iPhone, I shot it in 24 frames per second in Filmic Pro in the Filmic Log V2 codec with, I actually switched the lens element over from the wide lens to the telephoto lens, which is kind of like a 52mm full frame equivalent, I believe. And then all I did was I brought it into DaVinci Resolve, I de-squeezed it manually, I added Filmic's LUT to bring it into the 709 color space. Same thing with the Blackmagic footage, 24 frames per second, B-RAW, brought it into DaVinci, manually de-squeezed it, added DaVinci's 4K to Rec 709 LUT. And that's pretty much all that I did. I corrected a little bit for exposure, but you'll get to see a little bit more footage between the two, kind of make a better comparison. They're not side by side in terms of like being the exact same shot, but they're both shots around the house, a couple things outside, stuff like that. It's important to note that one of the entire reasons people like anamorphic lenses is that they help you preserve a certain shallow depth of field of, a slightly longer lens like a 40mm or a 50mm, while giving you a wider view that you would see typically on shorter lenses, like in the 20mm, 30mm range. So a 40mm on a micro four thirds camera has a certain depth of field. A 40mm 1.8x anamorphic, when de-squeezed, will maintain that depth of field, but it will give you a wider view to about the equivalent of a 22mm lens. That's why a lot of people think, that's one of many reasons a lot of people think anamorphic lenses are more cinematic. So what do you guys think of both the footage in the music video and some of this test footage that I just shot out here? For me, I am honestly really impressed with what you can do with a phone and one of these lens attachments. I would totally film an entire video with this. I really would. Partially to prove a point, but also because you can get really great results. It's not without its flaws, certainly, but they're so minute that if people are noticing the flaws in your footage, it's probably more about what you shot than what you shot with. That's just my personal opinion. So if all you've got is a couple $100, but you want to start dabbling in anamorphic, I think this is a great place to start. They also have cheaper versions of this. I went with this one because I really like the cage. It allows you to do a lot of different, attachments. It's sturdy, and it's a nice lens for what it does. But there are a lot of options, and I think this is a really great way to dabble into Anamorphic. And like I said, we used it in a very real, tangible product that we were not trying to compare. We were trying to make a great story. I know for a fact that I will continue to use this setup in other stories, other music videos, some shorts. Like, I have plans for this specific setup because of where I can put it and what it can achieve. That being said, every time I see the Blackmagic 4K footage with that vase and lens, I'm blown away. I'm so excited. It inspires me because I know that I can get legitimately like Hollywood caliber footage at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the size. The camera body, the lens itself is still about as big as a normal anamorphic lens. But either way, regardless of what tool you choose, you've got great options, and it's a really exciting time to be making footage. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, the music video, as well as this video. And we'll see you next time. We're going to have a lot more content around that video and a lot more kind of tips and tricks on how we pulled some of the stuff off, as well as more videos in the near future. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.